spiritual capacity. And thank you very much for joining us for this week's episode of Our Ancestors' Voices, a weekly program sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We are glad that you are joining us for today's topic, the healthiest love. And the disclaimer is we are not relationship counselors. We're not, Shakura is just about a PhD in public health, but we're not practitioners of how to engage in proper relationships. But what we do know, and what we have learned over the years, is that revolutionary principles, if you take them seriously and they guide your life, they guide what you do, they should be at the forefront of any relationship that you engage in. If you're approaching your relationships like they're outside of your activist work, then that's an oxymoron. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I know there's a lot of confusion by what I just said, so we'll try to spend this hour breaking that down. We give honor and respect to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere and their fight for their liberation. We are glad that Leonard Peltier is out of prison. We're glad that anybody that can get out of these hellholes that they call prison can get out. But at the same time, we don't celebrate the United Snakes of America releasing an indigenous person, an indigenous activist person from prison. That should never have happened in the first place. So we say that the struggle that the indigenous people are engaged in continues and will continue until they have victory. And our African ancestors, of course, we continue that fight. We continue that struggle to do our best to represent the dignity that they wanted us to represent. Ahmed Sekou Touré was correct when he said in 1964, when Malcolm X was visiting Guinea and having dinner with Sekou Touré and other party members of the Democratic Party of Guinea, Sekou Touré leaned over to Malcolm X, according to Malcolm X in his autobiography, and said, the most important thing our people need is dignity. And those words ring out to me every single day, especially today as we look at how so many of us are acting. You know, so many of us are just engaging in behavior to get likes, social media likes, clout, potentially money. Most of y'all ain't getting no money, but you think you have the potential to do it. So you're behaving like coons because you think that's what you have to do to get into the good graces of the slave master. So Sekou Touré was so correct about dignity. So that's a lot of what we'll talk about today as it relates to relationships. And again, we thank you for joining us. Brief introductions, Our Ancestors' Voices. This program is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, the AAPRP. The AAPRP is, of course, a revolutionary, independent, mass, pan-African political party with its base in Africa. And our objective is Pan-Africanism, which we correctly define as one unified socialist Africa. If you say you like solutions, you should love us because we're providing you one. We need one unified socialist Africa. And we can explain to anybody who has an open mind to hear it, not wasting our time with people that ain't even engaged in organizing work and just want to argue philosophically, like engage in intellectual masturbation. We don't have time for that. But for people who are genuinely interested in coming to an understanding of what this work is about, we're happy to explain to you how one unified socialist Africa is essential for addressing the problems people face, African people face all over the world. And it's our contribution to the worldwide movement for justice and human salvation, which the next stage of that is worldwide communism. And we know that. And if you don't know that, that's your problem. Do the work that we've done and you'll know it too. And our work to achieve Pan-Africanism is outlined in Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare on this page. The cover is, at least. And Our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by Shakura and myself. We are both active organizers in the APRP, and we are related as father and daughter. So to turn us over, I will turn it over to Shakura to get us started.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Greetings, everyone. What's going on? So, we hope that you all are doing well, and hopefully, you are staying safe and protected from the propaganda and the consumerism that is in full effect as always, but especially around this country's institutions that tend to come up specifically for this time of year, whether it's President's Day, whether it's Lincoln's birthday, any opportunity to put a mattress on sale, right? Or in this case, to celebrate Valentine's Day. And so, we've been doing so many seminars for a good amount of time now. And I think this particular seminar, if I had to pick one of my top three or top five, I guess, I would definitely say this seminar is in that list. I say that because a lot of people, I think, when we say join an organization that's working for justice, I think the first thing that crosses people's minds, especially because we are asking you to think about something bigger than yourself, is for people to think about how they need to completely divorce their current practices, routines, habits, because they need to now become extremely militant, start wearing a leather jacket and completely give up a portion of themselves so that they can only think about dedicating their time and energy, all of their time and energy to this struggle. And although that's a valid, description, because this kind of work does require immense dedication, commitment, discipline, humanity, dignity, empathy, right? It does require those things. It does. Um, but I wouldn't say that we or many of the organizations that we work with, I wouldn't say that we are asking for you to only give all your time to this struggle, because everything is dialectical. That's one of the practices that we respect and we respond and we follow within the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And quite simply, it means that there is always a plus and a minus to something that is occurring. Believe it or not, even capitalism is dialectical, because there are pluses as a result of capitalism and there are thousands of minuses, right? So I think that we want to give this seminar today because maybe you haven't had a chance to hear the previous ones when we've, performed and provided and presented this particular topic in the past. But we understand that you have other things going on. I think the balance becomes you trying to figure out what kind of organizer you want to be. I think that's where the balance comes in. Maybe you are a single person, so your time might be a little bit spent differently than someone who has a child, or someone who's responsible for a child or taking care of a sick loved one. Maybe you work crazy hours and you're not able to give your time in that way, but maybe you're able to do some of your work at your plantation, at your slave, right? For the party and the masses of people. So, however you break that down, that's completely up to you. But this is exactly why we give this topic, because we want you to understand that as an organizer, but also as an individual, you need to figure out what that balance looks like for you, because what we don't want is for you to reach burnout more quickly than you need to. And then you give up on the struggle because you're just insistent that there's no way that you can be yourself while still being committed to the struggle. We don't want that. We want you to be yourself. We want you to have the humility to understand when you need to grow. We want you to have the humility to know when you need to be struggled with and to be open to being struggled with in the event that there is something that you are not understanding, you're not seeing in a certain way. And because of your ignorance, it is blocking humanity from moving forward. But at the same time, we still want you to, enjoy streaming music if that's what you enjoy doing. We want you to enjoy making beats if you're a content creator, if you cut hair, if you do makeup, like whatever your thing is, we want you to have those practices. We want you to protect those practices along with organizing. Notice I didn't say they're mutually exclusive, they're together. You're coupling them, okay? But those practices, along with organizing, are literally what keeps you sane, and it's what allows you to continue fighting. So we would never ask you to divorce from that because we understand that you're not going to be your best full self. We understand that you're not going to be able to commit completely because a portion of you will be missing. And as I just said, this would also lead to you reaching burnout much quicker. This would lead to you probably selling out much quicker. It would lead to you bringing the master into our space and our spaces because you don't know what else to do with yourself. So no, we definitely see the value of that, and we want you to be able to have that passion. You might even be able to cultivate that passion into a skill that you can now dedicate to your organization. I think that I still have a lot to learn when it comes about being a speaker, a public speaker. But I also feel like being in the All African People's Revolutionary Party, being a work study member, it has severely provided me with ample opportunities to practice what it means to be an MC, to practice what it means to facilitate. I used to be super nervous when people would hand me microphones and I would have to get on stage. And because of my upbringing, because of my childhood, different parents who were in theater backgrounds, things of that nature, grandparents in theater, I've had plenty of opportunities. But I would argue the AAPRP has given me ample opportunities as an adult, which I would argue is a little different than you growing up in that light as a child. And so, do I still get nervous? Yes, but I don't get as nervous as I used to. And so my point is you might not even know that you have a skill set because you haven't even tapped into it, and now you're able to, spend some extra time learning more about who you are, and you might find that your skill set is so good, like you are really good at what you're doing, that you might be able to contribute that skill to help us. Maybe you're really good at making flyers. That's never been my strong suit. We need you. Please come join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. If you're good at making flyers, if you're good at figuring out how to translate information on a flyer so that we can produce these flyers in multiple languages, we definitely need you. We need you last week, yesterday. We definitely need you, right? If your skill set falls in another line, maybe you're really good at creating curriculum that is Pan Africanist for young children ages 3 to 16, whatever. Find your niche and use that because we need that. We need that. And if you don't want to give it to us, then maybe continue to just harvest it for yourself so that you can still find a way to restore your energy by doing whatever the practice is that brings you joy. So then you can prepare yourself to be ready when it's time for you to organize. We think about humanity and capitalism, and you should really think about how oil and water are the best way to really describe those two entities. That's really the best way. If you remember any of your chemistry classes or just your basic seventh grade science, you remember that whenever you would pour oil into water, it would not blend well, if you will. It would not, because the two entities are not connected in a way where they can disperse within themselves. There's no intersection about that. And so we have to kind of think about that a little bit more because when we think about humanity, we would think that we're in a position where you have people who are acknowledging other people. They're not ignoring people. They're trying to help one another out as they can, when they can. And instead, we don't see that every day unfold. I would argue if you are out for an average of 24 hours and you're just observing on one particular bus bench, at a park bench, at a table at a park, you probably will witness, more inhumane things, than you would humane things, because our society has normalized inhumanity. Not only has it normalized it, it has promoted and celebrated it. Because that park that you're sitting at was probably a park where an oppressor harmed and assaulted some people. You driving on a street is probably taking you to an area where people are destined to suffer because they have low SES income status. And so, because of it, they're more likely to not receive the resources that they need. They're more likely to be overlooked. That neighborhood is chronically more likely to be impoverished than other surrounding neighborhoods because of X, Y, and Z. Not only is that neighborhood a food desert, it's a hospital desert and it's an internet desert where a lot of the people there don't even have internet in their houses. So, like, we can think about some different ways to think about that because humanity and capitalism simply don't mix. They don't mix. And we also have to understand that it's not even possible to have a humanity within a society such as capitalism, because here's the clincher: if that were to happen, that would actually mean that the system of capitalism, what capitalism means, right? The system of capitalism, where it's protecting private corporations so that they can continue to profit off of materials sold. Why? Because they not only can set prices for those materials, but they also control the production of the materials. So they get to decide how many pencils are made that they can slap a price on and ship out to all these office stores. So when you go in trying to get your kids school supplies, you now have to buy the pencil based on the price that they have set. They can do the same thing for blenders. They can do the same thing for sunglasses. You want to talk about hair care products. You want to talk about tires on vehicles. None of that is without capitalistic influence with it. So when we think more about that, we can really start to break this down and think about how, if we were to live in a humane society, it would have to be completely eradicated of capitalism, because capitalism itself, the same system that promotes private corporations to profit because they control production of resources, does not care about humanity. If they did, we wouldn't have people who are struggling to keep their lights and food on the table. If they did, we wouldn't have people that are outside unhoused in below 30-degree weather when there's 5 to 7 inches of snow outside. If we did, we wouldn't have opportunities where people are not finding any other way because they don't have mental health support, they don't have mental health resources available. So they do take guns to public places. They do try to harm and shoot people because that's all they understand how to do, because they feel like the system has let them down and overlooked them. And until they get the respect that they deserve, that's how they're thinking about responding. So, yeah, thinking about humanity and capitalism is almost as absurd as trying to drive a vehicle with no steering wheel, no tires, and no engine. It's simply impossible. It cannot be done because the system itself would actually have to promote humanity. The system itself would actually have to value the people that live in that area, that are impacted by that system. And capitalism does not give a darn about any of these folks. That's why we always try to make the argument that even European people need to understand that, yes, they have privilege. Yes, they benefit from white supremacy. They benefit from European privilege. Absolutely. But they better make sure that they have enough finances to stay within a certain class status. Because if their social class status is limited, then they might as well be considered of color. They might as well be considered colonized, because then they're not going to be as valued because they don't make as much money. So even though they're the right skin color, you have to have the right money and be the right skin color and be the right gender and be the right religion and be the right, all of these things, right? And if you're not all of these things, then at some point you're still insignificant. At some point you're still going to be treated like trash. At some point you're still going to be discounted. At some point you're still going to be dehumanized. And at some point the system is going to let you know it never ever cared about you. At some point it is going to happen, because you either make enough money to survive or you don't. It's very simple. So this is how we kind of have to think about this, because this society unfortunately only puts a significance on value. And if you don't meet the valued criteria, then thus you are ergo insignificant. This is why unhoused people get overlooked. I mentioned earlier that they are ignored. That's why you're conditioned to not even look when you're at the stoplight to the left, because you don't even want to be inconvenienced by the fact that they are not of a certain standard in your mind. And you're thinking to yourself, they should have made different choices. Well, you have no way of knowing what happened to get the situation to be what it is, but the propaganda teaches you that they are less important than you are because you have a vehicle and a house to go to. They don't. So therefore, don't even give them the time of day. Don't even make eye contact with them. Don't even acknowledge that this other human being is standing next to you, vulnerably expressing their struggle, because you don't even need to give them the time of day. They are insignificant. That's precisely the problem. Is you have people walking around thinking that they can assign a higher value on other people based on what they ascertain to be is of appropriate or of value or profit. And now we have situations where it's really difficult for people to feel like they are enough because they've been suffering from that for so long. Yet another product of capitalism, right? So we think about these things, and we also think about how if this were a humane society, you wouldn't have people that are struggling with imposter syndrome. You wouldn't have people that are struggling with confidence. You wouldn't have people that are struggling with self efficacy, because a humane society would construct resources and put them in place to help people manage those things on a better day to day basis. I strongly doubt that people in Cuba, for example, have some of the same confidence issues that maybe students here in the US have. If we were to interview the medical students in Cuba and compare that to medical students in the US, the amount of mental health, the amount of distress, the amount of anguish, anxiety, I would argue is strictly based on students on US soil, because there are systems in place, there are programs in place, there are hierarchies, there are escalation plans in place. In Cuba, for example, they can't afford for those students to lose their mind and reach burnout, because then they're not able to practice the medicine from a socialist standpoint. And they're not able to go back to their respected countries and practice the medicine. So they have done everything they can do to protect those students, to make sure they have the support they need, to make sure that they can take time off from school. They don't even pay for school, so they can afford to take time off. They can afford to take a semester off if they need to recalibrate. Even thinking about that, it makes me feel so emotional, because to not have that kind of stress on you when you're trying to finish school is outstandingly necessary. But yet, so many people assume that graduate students should just have it together and we should be able to just do what we need to do. And those expectations and that pressure is daunting and devastating and drastic. It really is. Because then it takes you to a point where this is why you start to feel incompetent. This is why you start to feel like you're not enough. And so we can compare places like Cuba and think about how beautiful it would be. You would probably actually enjoy getting a degree in Cuba, because you wouldn't have all the stress associated with financial aid. You wouldn't have all the stress associated with professors who are capitalistic in nature. And you wouldn't have to hear that bullshit about capitalism every single day. I would love to complete a degree in a socialist country. I would absolutely love that. And that's something that we all should think about, because if you've never completed an educational degree in a socialist country, then you really don't understand what you're missing. Because to actually have a humane base for how knowledge is given to you, that's absurd, because you can't even imagine it. You can't even fathom it. You can't wrap your brain around it. You can't. Next slide, please. So we have to think more about that and really start to break that down. And that means that we need to pull in with understanding how humanity needs to be connected to the choices that we make as organizers. If you are not in an organization that is working for justice, we strongly recommend that you, again, continue to find your niche, continue to find your practice, your routine, your habit, your skill set, your pattern, whatever it is that you like doing, crocheting, knitting, if you like playing basketball, whatever your thing is, continue to foster that. Practice that, build that skill up. And in addition to doing that practice, that skill, we strongly recommend you join an organization that is working for justice, because both knitting and organizing are going to help you to be able to build your mind ideologically and politically with more education behind it. You're not going to be able to save the people if you only know how to knit. You're not going to be able to save yourself and make sure that you can practice pacing yourself through this work if you're only organizing. This is why you need both, because both hopefully will offer a space where you can de-stress when you're feeling the capitalist impact, the imperialist impact, the Zionism impact. That's going to be your way to resist that. That's going to be your way to challenge that and to find a way to release anything that's connected to that, because you still know that you're here for a purpose. You're here to change the world and to make it a better place. That's what you should tell yourself every day, because that is the expectation that you should have of yourself. Again, it's bigger than you, right? So you should be living for something beyond yourself. And again, if knitting makes you happy, continue to knit. But organizing should also make you happy, because now you're making sure that you're doing something that someone else will benefit from, not just your own self. We can also think about how, this idea of trying to humanize within capitalism, right? So, this capitalistic world, for the most part, when you display humanity, you run the risk of being harmed, you run the risk of being gaslit, you run the risk of people making fun of you, bullying you, you run the risk of not being strong, but actually appearing weak. You run the risk of not being worthy, right? Not being respectable. You're a clown, you're a coward, whatever that might look like. You might even be taken advantage of, or there might even be a worse, maybe fatal outcome from that, right? So, this is how we kind of break this down. This human behavior is most often met with disdain and disrespect, because those who have exhibited humanity tend to have kind of an outcaster situation. They're kind of outcasted a little bit. And we would argue that this is where you really have to start to, kind of break down like why you do what you do. You should understand that. You shouldn't just be doing what other people are doing because other people said to do it. You should know why you do every single thing that you do. And if you don't know why you do every single thing that you do, you should seriously think about it and consider it. The last thing we need is for you to join an organization that's working for justice and you don't know how to take initiative or back up why you do what you do. You, not that you owe someone an explanation, but if someone were to ask you, you should be able to explain that, because then that means that not only are you capable of thinking for yourself, but you have confidence to think for yourself. You'd be surprised what some confidence will do for you in this system. Is it going to be easy? No, you're going to have to work on your confidence level every single day, because the system is going to deconstruct it every single day. But you have to put that aside. You have to remind yourself that this is bigger than you. You have to remind yourself that you deserve to be confident, and the system should not be allowed to take that from you. Your ancestors did not die so that you could continue to take the brutal beatings that they also had to take before they sacrificed so that we could still be here, so that our ancestral genes could still survive and be here. We have a responsibility to take this and make it so much better for future generations. And we have more resources now than our ancestors did. We have more access to knowledge because they documented what to do. They gave us the footprint. All we have to do is pick up a book and learn something, join an organization that's working for justice so we can talk more about it and continue to practice what that balance looks like. I can think of so many examples just this weekend of me trying to balance between work study, revising my chapters for my dissertation, and still being able to enjoy myself, because I wanted to have some opportunities where I didn't have to have those two other things in my peripheral when I wanted to just relax. And it could be little things like cooking a meal, if that's what you enjoy doing with your loved one, or showing yourself love. Because this seminar is not just about what you and another individual can do, it's about honoring yourself. You're not going to be a good organizer if you don't know how to respect yourself. And the system is certainly not going to respect you if you don't even know how to respect yourself. They're not going to respect you if you do know how to respect yourself, but they're certainly not going to respect you if you don't even show them and display it for them. So we encourage you all to join an organization that's working for justice, establish some routines, some practices so that you can show yourself love, or continue to show that with your partner, whatever that looks like. Continue to practice what that looks like. And don't forget, you have a responsibility to the masses of people. You have a responsibility. You should tell yourself that every day. The best thing you could do for yourself is resist individualism and tell yourself every day, I have a responsibility to the masses of people, which means joining an organization that's working for justice. If you're not ready to do that, then find a way to support a Pan-Africanist organization that's working for justice and set a goal for when you are ready. Set a goal for 6 months from today. Set a goal from 3 weeks from today, whatever. But you won't know until you try. Give yourself a chance. You never know. There might be a confidence booster in there for you.
Ashe, obrigada, asante sana, midasi. Thank you very much. And we just want to say that when we talk about healthy relationships, the issue isn't love. Right? Last time, I think it was last year that we did this topic, someone reached out and asked me, "Would is it that you don't believe in love?" And I explained to them, like, this is a weekly program we do. Like, if you paid any attention, you would know that. I don't know what else to say to you. Like, I'm not expressing my personal position on anything. We're talking about a revolutionary scientific position on how we walk through the world. So there's an issue with love. We as revolutionaries, we love love. We love being able to love. Love is the reason why we live life. As Che Guevara said, the underlying element of revolutionary struggle is love, the desire to see humanity come up. And you have to do the necessary work to get to the point where you appreciate that. Like, I can tell you with complete confidence that I love seeing people come up. I love seeing people's lives improve. I don't look at people's lives like, oh wow, they're doing that. I'm hating on them because I love my life. I love where I've come through in life, and so that allows me to appreciate and love everybody else's journey in their challenges. So love is a positive thing. Love is never the issue. Of course, the challenge that we face is that we live in a profit driven capitalist society. Everything is driven by profit in this backward society. And so, as a consequence of that, everything is defined as a commodity. Everything has a price. You hear it all the time. Everybody has a price. No, you have a price because you're a sellout, a weak sellout. Everybody doesn't have a price, but that's what you hear all the time. Everybody has a price. It's all kind of people that have demonstrated they didn't have a price. You don't think that people like Fred Hampton, people like El Hajj Malik, El Shabazz, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, people like Asada Shakur, people like Amilcar Cabral. You don't think those people knew that their lives were in danger for the work that they were doing? They could have easily, they had many offers. You got the tape recording of the FBI visiting Malcolm X and offering him money if he were to become a snitch against the movement. He flat turned it down. And don't come to me with that bullshit. There's no evidence that he did anything else other than turn it down, other than what's between the sticky stuff between a lot of people's ears. There's no evidence of that. The only evidence we have is that he stayed true to that principle. And that's because of this love that we're talking about that's based on challenging this backward capitalist system. But we have to understand that love is defined in this society. And when I say this, I'm not just talking about the United Snakes of America. I'm talking about the entire world, which is dominated by capitalism, right? It's defined through a strictly superficial and material over people perspective. So this is the reason why people value things over people in this world today. You can lose your life over the shoes you have on, or the watch you have on, or the jewelry you have, or whatever nonsense it is. You can easily lose your life, and nobody can refute that. And the only reason for that is because those things, those material things, have more value in capitalism than human beings. That's it. An example of that is you just look at the never-ending attacks against African women and all women really, but particularly African women on social media right these days. And I have a picture of it. I don't know this clown, the one with the light skinned dude there, the second to the bottom there. He's always on has these videos on there, and he's so critical of African women, and you can just tell by the way he talks that he has no experience with African women, probably not even his mama. I don't know if his mother is African, but I know there's a whole lot of African men on social media that clearly have no connection to African women. And you can tell just based on the vomit that spews out of their mouths. But yet, this is a reflection of this society because this is what this society promotes is this disrespect of African women on a constant basis, disrespect of women, period. I mean, you can just see, like, look, I'll give you a pop example in this country to illustrate what I'm saying on pop culture. This woman, Taylor Swift. I don't listen to Taylor Swift's music. I don't know anything about her music. I If you put a gun to my head and told me to name a Taylor Swift song, I couldn't do it. You'd have to shoot me through the brain. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I don't know anything about the woman. I just know she's a huge pop music star in this country. And what she did is she expressed her liberal views, right? Her liberal political views. And because of that, whenever on social media there's any mention of this young woman, these white men just lose their minds with anger. And I look at it because I like to study social phenomenon. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, they don't know that. And it's always these patriarchal attacks. Like I saw one today and they were talking about how she has a little girl's body. That's how, and and I look at some of these dudes, their profile pictures, and it's like, dude, you shouldn't be talking about nobody's body. Like, that's not something you should ever, that's not a pathway you should ever, ever engage in going through. Like, you need to look in the mirror and figure that out quick because you're opening the door to all kind of, and it's like, that's the thing though. Like, there's so much anti-women, and that's a white woman, there's so much anti-woman sentiment, and that spills over into anti-trans women, anti-LGBTQ. There's so much of that, and it's all fueled by this capitalist society where we had this discussion in our cadre circle meeting this morning, where men are socialized to see themselves as the providers. But capitalism increasingly doesn't provide that model anymore, where men can provide for this. That's not there. That's non-existent anymore. You got to go back to the 1960s when that was a reality. And so, because of that, um, these men lash out at the segments of society that don't really have a public voice to defend themselves. And that would be African people. That would be indigenous people in the Western Hemisphere. That would be women. That would be LGBTQ people. That would be, of course, trans people within that. And so this is what happens. And it's all a result of the dehumanization of this system. So, when we talk about these capitalist holidays, right? These capitalist promoted holidays, whether it's Valentine's Day, Christmas, Easter, whatever one you want to choose, what's irrefutable about all of them is that all of these so-called commemorations are really only about, they're never about what they're supposed to be about, like Valentine's Day and love, Christmas, the birth of Christ, and more importantly, Christ being a servant of humanity and being willing to engage in class struggle against the forces who are oppressing humanity. Nobody ever talks about that. A lot of you hearing this never even heard it put that way before. In Easter, this resurrection is never about any of that. It's always about the institutions of Walmart and Target and all these capitalist entities, and these entities exist all over the world, Amazon, and selling stuff and you spending money. That's always what this stuff is about. Commitment to consumerism and loyalty to the capitalist system. That's what all of these capitalist holidays are about. Commitment to the capitalist system. Sometimes the messages are subtle, like when they have Valentine's stuff and they basically put out a vision that the reason why you can love someone is because you live in the freest country in the world, referencing this backward ass country. And then some of the messages are overt, like the 4th of July or 4th of the lie, as we call it, where they just basically tell you that you need to give respect to our country because it's the greatest country on the planet Earth. And most people believe that, even though there's no evidence whatsoever to support that claim. The only areas where this country is the best in the world is, or at the top of the list of being the best, is at incarcerating people, um, providing the worst quality health care to people, providing the worst quality education, um, mass shootings, the sale of firearms. All of these areas are the only areas where this country leads the world in anything. There's no areas connected to the development of humanity where this country leads in anything. And that's the same with all of the capitalist countries: Britain, France, Belgium, Germany, all of them, Canada, the Zionist state of Israel. That's a true statement. So the truth is, relationships in a collective society can never be individual institutions because we have a responsibility to each and every one of us. In other words, you cannot be in a relationship with another person and exist in a vacuum. Well, I don't have anything to do with what's going on in the world. It's just me. I'm just taking care of my family. That is the most backward ass position anybody could ever articulate. But yet you hear it every day. And a lot of you believe that. I just have to take care of my family. You believe it. We know you believe it. But it's a backward ass position. And we'll tell you to your face it's a backward ass position. And here's the reason why, and you cannot refute it. If the people who came before us and made their great sacrifices had felt the same selfish way that so many of us feel today, your black ass would still be on a slave plantation right now. That's the fact of the matter. You would still be on a slave plantation picking cotton, saying, "Yes, sir, boss." And a lot of you still do that today. You just don't pick cotton. You might file papers or do something else, but you still, it's the same reality because that slave mentality is still dominant. Those people that came before us had dignity and refused to bow down and refused to surrender that dignity and paid the ultimate price for that. And so, because of that, you don't have the right today to say, "Well, I only want to take care of myself and my family," because whatever you have doesn't belong to just you. It belongs to the masses of people because it was the mass struggle that created the conditions where you could achieve that. That's irrefutable. Whatever I have today, and I have a lot, but it's not mine personally. It belongs to the masses of the people. It belongs to the masses of the people. Period. Dot. Period. Dot. I mean, I've been able to um, learn a lot about finances from my father and over time and create some stability. And that is because of the struggle that I've engaged in for the masses of people. So that doesn't just belong to me, it belongs to our struggle for justice. So, yeah, I use my resources to advance this struggle. I'm not selfish, like I'm just going to use this for me and my family. What if people would have said that before? I'm just going to protect my family. I'm not going to protect your family. Then your family would have never escaped the plantation without that help. And we'd still be on it today in the real sense. So that's just important to recognize that because we have to keep in the foremost of our mind what love actually means. Love is not a selfish term. Love is a collective term. And so we have to learn how to view ourselves as being a part of a collective society and not just representing ourselves as individuals and not just and when you're just your family, your biological family, that's still representing yourself as an individual. So we have to develop that collective consciousness, and we don't have that today. And this is, I would argue, one of the main reasons why we suffer as much as we do. We don't have that collective consciousness. We don't have a sense that we're a part of a community. And we run around here talking about we don't have no community, but you're not doing anything to develop community. Communities come from the masses of the people. What are you doing to develop that community? Who are you reaching out to? Who are you working with? Who are you supporting that's doing work? Who is doing work to emancipate our people that you're supporting? Nothing. So this is why we're in the situation we're in. It's not rocket science. It's very easy to determine and assess why we're in the situation that we're in today. Now, certainly, there is this backward system that is responsible for our oppression. But once we realize that there's a problem, if we don't do anything, then it becomes our fault. So we cannot look at love as an individual institution. In fact, I would argue that if you do nothing for your people and nothing for humanity, you can't even love the person you're in a relationship with. It's not possible from a humanistic and a scientific standpoint. It's not possible because the only way you can love someone that you're with in a relationship is because you have respect for humanity. And the only way you can truly demonstrate a respect for humanity is by sacrificing to advance humanity. And if you're not doing any of that, how can you argue that you respect humanity? And if you don't, you can't say, well, I don't respect humanity. I just respect myself. You're a part of humanity. Your partner is a part of humanity, unless your partner is a dog or a coyote or a cat or a bear or something. They're a part of humanity. So, how can you not respect humanity and say you respect yourself and your partner? That's clearly, obviously, that's not true. So these are the things that we have to challenge about how we walk through these so-called holy days and what we do. Because reality, if we're not developing that collective consciousness, then the best we can achieve with a partner is a commodity relationship. Just like when you get a car, you value the car, you take care of it, you put all your resources into this car, so you value it and you take care of it and you ensure that nothing happens to it and you appreciate it. That's all you have in your relationships are the same thing. It's like a material possession. It's not really doing anything to develop humanity. I know that's like a really difficult concept for people to conceptualize, but you cannot refute it. And this is what we do in this society. This is what we do in this capitalist world society. And this is what has to change in order for us to move forward. There's no individual forward progress, it's a collective forward progress. You cannot advance. The only way you can advance individually is if you sell out. If you sell out the masses of people and just decide you're going to advance yourself for your own individual purposes, your own money or whatever, and then we don't even have to deal with you because you know now you're the enemy. But I'm talking about anybody that claims to be a person of honor and dignity. You cannot advance without collective advancement. There is no human way to do that. And so what we need to do, what needs to happen, you all, is obviously, the definition of insanity is doing things the same way and expecting a different result. We have to be willing to take risks. And we can't just pretend that we are not perpetuating backward institutions unless we begin to implement serious challenges to these capitalist values. So that's a question you have to ask yourself. Like, what am I doing to challenge these backward values? If you sit around with people your family, I don't care who it is, and they say stupid things, right? Like common things you hear every day. Like this last week, well, like that was the worst halftime Super Bowl performance I've ever seen in my life. And you don't have any way to engage that in a way that lifts the discussion up. When people say things like, well, all African men are dogs, and you don't have any way to challenge that, or people say all African women's are thoughts and gold diggers, and you don't have any way to challenge that on any level, then you're a part of the problem. When we say join an organization and you hear that 1 million times and you refuse to do it and you make every excuse in the world why it's not going to happen, I'm sorry, you're a big part of the problem. And I'll tell you why. Because all of us have, we had this event a couple of weeks ago, and this European woman was in the event, and she was talking way too much. So I shut her down. Like, we don't need to hear from you anymore. You've said a lot, and what you're saying is not advancing the conversation. So learn to listen more. Like, this is, we really don't want to hear from you anymore. I said that. I can get you in touch with people that were there. They can tell you. I don't just tell you I'm saying that. I talk to these people when they behave this way. And she said, well, I have all these health problems. I'm like, well, then go see a doctor. We're here to talk about how we can build capacity to struggle for our people. Go see a doctor. Like, we're not, I told her, you Europeans come in here and you talk about you're here to help us, and all you do is dump all this emotional labor on us. We don't need you. Get your ass up and get out of here. I mean, you should be ashamed of yourself. You're not helping. And I'm just going to say that the overwhelming majority of Europeans who call themselves progressive people are really just creating a whole lot of emotional labor for us. You don't do anything to contribute to the work that we're doing. You take away from it by trying to take our energies from us. You shouldn't do that. If you really want to uh, claim the title of being someone who's fighting against the problem and not the problem. Because I can tell you, I don't take any energies away from women. I contribute and support the women's struggle for justice. I don't take any energy away from LGBTQ community. I contribute to that community. I make a contribution to them, and then back as our people like to say now, I make a contribution, then I sit my ass down somewhere. That's what I do. I don't sit there and drain. Well, why did you say men aren't this? They don't need to hear that. That's not, if you don't understand, get up and do some study and then come back 20 years from now. Don't waste people's time with your nonsense because you're not mentally mature enough and sophisticated enough to take responsibility for yourself. I know people don't like being talked to like this. I don't give a damn. Okay, we're trying to get some work done here. We're not babysitters. We're not trying to put your pacifier in your mouth. We're talking as adults to adults, right? So if you people can't stand it, then get out the way. Like, that's what you need to do at this point. We need people who are willing to say, hey, I want to make a contribution, no matter how small we're not measuring that. We're saying anybody that can make a contribution, we will work. We appreciate you. We will work with you. You have to decide what that looks like or how much that is. Nobody's forcing anybody to do that, but we cannot continue to play these games that are being played because all they're doing is draining our collective resources. So if you're going to be pursuing a relationship or in a relationship or trying to build the relationship, you cannot do that separate from the struggle for justice in this world. You can't do that. I mean, if you do, then you're contributing to perpetuating the injustice because you're taking necessary resources. How are we going to have a movement for change and we don't have families in it? That's not going to work. We don't have elders in it. We don't have youth in it. We don't have women in it. We don't have LGBTQ in it. We don't have men in it. We don't have workers. We don't have students. We don't have all of these elements of society. We will never move where we need to move. And the only way we can get all those people is when all those people participate. And don't be running around here talking about, yeah, I don't have to do that. I don't have time for that. I got kids. You think all of us in the struggle didn't raise kids? We raised our kids better than you. The hell are you talking about? People say that to me all the time. Well, I have kids. Like, I haven't raised, I've raised my child and several other children. Shakura's on here. She can tell you if I'm lying about it. I've raised several children that weren't mine. I only have one biological child. I've raised several children. So don't come to me with that. I want to, like, get a jug of water and toss it in your face. That's an insult. We all have problems in this society. This problem's based on problems. Nobody is immune from being able to make some kind of positive contribution. Nobody. That's it. And if you're going to be in relationships, the individual relationship should be just the first step towards the collective one. So that means you should see the necessity to make some kind of consistent contribution. You decide what that is. We're not, nobody's trying to tell you what that needs to be. You decide what that is. But you should not be comfortable until you're consistently making that contribution. That's your responsibility to your ancestors and our future generations, because everything I'm doing is not for me. I only got a few more years left on this earth. I clearly understand that. I'm doing the work I'm doing for the future generations and for the ancestors, for your children, even if I don't know them. That's what I'm doing. But it's not enough of us. It's not enough of us. So you gotta take that for what it is. If you want to love, do it right. Love humanity. And then you'll find it much easier for you to love the person that you're with, because you'll have the proper context to appreciate what you exist and what you can build together as a part of a collective. So thank you for joining us today. I want to invite you back next week, February 23rd. We're going to be talking about the criminal distortion of Malcolm X. All of the efforts designed to derail who this man was and what his contribution was. So please join us, same time, same place, same everything. And then in the upper left-hand corner, the red and white QR code has all of that information you see next to it. All of the AAPRP programs. Forward Ever Shop is there. You can buy clothes to support our revolutionary work. Please do. Go there. The link to get there is in that QR code. Scan it on your smartphone. Don't let the phone be smarter than you, though. That's not what we're trying to accomplish here. Hoodcommunist.org, revolutionary Pan-African blog. I'm humbled. I had another article I wrote published there talking about Kendrick Lamar and capitalist society and culture. So I encourage you to go there and read that one and all the articles there, right? And then now, y'all disappointed me, right? Like, we announced this last week. We're raising money for African Liberation Day. Nobody went there and did anything. Come on now. Come on now. I mean, you got $5, you got $10. I know you do. GoFundMe.com. Please go there and then go to Together for Africa's Future and Dignity. Type that in the search field and make a donation for African Liberation Day 2025. Please do. Please don't make us sign in next week and there's no additional donations. That's this man, that's disgraceful. You know, Kyle Rittenhouse can kill activists for justice. Um, the ones that killed Arbery, the brother Arbery, for walking through the neighborhood. Um, George Zimmerman killing Trayvon Martin, and within days, they had hundreds of thousands of dollars donated to them. And these are nothing but scumbag ass criminals. And they had hundreds of thousands of dollars donated to them. Some people gave $5, some people gave $2, some people gave $500 and $1,000. So whatever you can give that. But that makes no sense that they can get all that money, and here we are fighting for the liberation of African people worldwide, and African Liberation Day is a tool for that, and people can't even give $5 to that. I mean, we must love slavery then. If that's the, I know that's not true. So please go there. Go to GoFundMe.com and go to type in search field Together for Africa's Future and Dignity. Please do that today. Join the APRP at aprp-intl.org. Become a sponsor for Burkina Books in the bottom right-hand corner, QR code, and buy my book and or tell people about it, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. Here in Sacramento, we have a big pro-immigration march this Saturday. I'm helping organize the security for it. We need tools. We had a meeting a few days ago about what we need. I use funds from this book, this $8 book. You got to get it on Amazon to be able to buy the tools. You're not doing anything to help secure people fighting for justice. So at least Buy a goddamn $8 book and make a contribution that way. That's cool. If you can do that, we appreciate it. Forward ever, backwards never. Stay strong and enjoy the rest of your day.